The night voyage within, a Jungian journey of self-discovery. There comes an hour when the day's masks fall away, when the noise of the world dims to a whisper, and you find yourself standing at the threshold of something deeper than sleep. It is in this sacred pause between waking and dreaming that the truest conversations begin, not with others, but with the parts of yourself that have been waiting patiently in the shadows, holding stories you forgot you knew. Tonight, you are not here by accident. Something within you has been stirring, calling you toward this moment of stillness. Perhaps it began as a restlessness you couldn't name, or a feeling that despite all your achievements and connections, something essential remains missing. The external world has given you its rewards and its wounds, but the internal landscape, vast, mysterious, and largely unexplored, beckons with promises of understanding that no outside voice can provide. You've learned to navigate the daylight world with skill and grace, presenting the version of yourself that others expect to see. You've mastered the art of conversation, the dance of social engagement, the performance of competence. Yet beneath this carefully constructed surface lies a deeper truth. You are far more complex, more wounded, and more wonderful than anyone, including yourself, has dared to acknowledge. The modern world teaches us to look outward for answers, to seek validation from external sources, to measure our worth by metrics that others have established. But there exists another way of knowing, an ancient wisdom that speaks in symbols and dreams, in the language of the soul rather than the syntax of society. This wisdom doesn't shout. It whispers. It doesn't demand. It invites. It doesn't judge. It simply reveals. Tonight, in this space, between day and night, between consciousness and dreams, you are invited to embark upon a different kind of journey. Not the kind that requires passports or suitcases, but the kind that asks only for your willingness to encounter yourself with fresh eyes. This is a voyage into the territories of your own psyche, where the maps are drawn not by geographers, but by the movements of your own heart. The tension unveiled, mirror of pain. You've been carrying something heavy for far too long. It sits in your chest like a stone, smooth from years of your fingers, worrying its edges in moments when you thought no one was watching. This weight has many names: loneliness, shame, the persistent feeling that you are somehow fundamentally flawed or unworthy of the love you crave. You've become an expert at hiding this burden, at arranging your life so that others See only the polished surfaces, while the raw places remain carefully concealed. The performance has been exhausting. Each day requires a conscious effort to present the version of yourself that you believe the world wants to see. Competent, together, unburdened by the deep uncertainties that visit you in the quiet hours. You've learned to smile at precisely the right moments to offer comfort to others, while your own wounds remain unattended, to project confidence even when doubt courses through your veins like a second bloodstream. But the mask, no matter how skillfully crafted, cannot be worn indefinitely. There are moments when it slips. In the bathroom mirror at 3 a.m., during conversations where someone's casual kindness unexpectedly breaks something open inside you, in dreams that leave you waking with tears on your cheeks and no clear memory of why. These glimpses of your unguarded self are both terrifying and strangely relieving, like accidentally catching sight of your reflection when you weren't prepared to perform. The pain you carry is not unique to you, though it feels impossibly personal. It speaks in the voice of every time you were told you were too much or not enough, every moment you learn to swallow your truth to keep peace, every instance when your authentic expression was met with disapproval or abandonment. This pain has become a faithful companion, so familiar that you sometimes forget it's there until it flares up with unexpected intensity. You've tried countless ways to manage this discomfort. Through achievement, through relationships, through substances or distractions, or the endless scroll of digital noise. Some of these strategies have provided temporary relief, moments when the weight lifted just enough for you to remember what lightness might feel like. But inevitably, the stone settles back into its familiar place, and you find yourself once again face to face with the persistent ache that no external remedy seems capable of healing. The most painful part isn't the weight itself, but the conviction that you must carry it alone. You've learned to be suspicious of your own needs, to apologize for taking up space, to minimize your struggles in service of not burdening others. The voice in your head has become a harsh critic, constantly comparing your inner experience to others' outer presentations, finding you lacking in ways both specific and vague. There are nights when you lie awake wondering if this is simply what adulthood feels like. This constant sense of swimming upstream against currents you cannot see, this exhaustion that sleep doesn't cure, this longing for something you cannot name. You wonder if others feel this hollowness too, or if you are uniquely broken in some fundamental way that will forever separate you from the ease and contentment that others seem to possess so naturally. The first glimpse. Metaphor Jung. But what if the very qualities you've learned to reject in yourself are not flaws to be fixed, but messengers to be heard? What if the darkness you've been fleeing contains not just pain, but power, not just wounds, but wisdom? There exists a way of understanding human experience that honors both the light and shadow within you, that sees your struggles not as evidence of failure, but as invitations to wholeness. Deep within the landscape of your psyche lives a child, not the confident, adapted child you learn to present to the world, but the one who knew spontaneous joy, who felt wonder without reservation, who trusted their own perceptions before learning to doubt them. This inner child carries gifts that your adult self has forgotten. The ability to play, to create without judgment, to love without calculation, to feel deeply without apology. But along the way, this child learned that certain parts of themselves were unwelcome in the world. Perhaps their anger was too big, their sadness too inconvenient, their joy too loud, their questions too probing. Gradually, these unacceptable aspects were pushed into the background, relegated to a hidden realm where they continued to live and grow, waiting for acknowledgement. This hidden realm has its own intelligence, its own purposes, its own gifts to offer, if only you knew how to listen. Your dreams have been trying to communicate with you all along, speaking in a language older than words. The recurring images, the strange scenarios, the people from your past who appear with cryptic messages. These are not random firings of neurons, but attempts by your deeper self to restore balance, to heal old wounds, to integrate the parts of you that have been living in exile. Every nightmare is a treasure map, every anxiety dream a coded message about what needs attention in your waking life. The shadow that follows you is not your enemy, but your abandoned twin, carrying all the qualities you learned to disown. It holds your unexpressed anger, your unacknowledged selfishness, your disavowed power, your hidden wisdom. The more you try to outrun this shadow, the longer and darker it grows. But when you turn to face it with curiosity, rather than judgment, it transforms from pursuer to teacher, revealing that what you feared was your darkness contains seeds of greatest gifts. There is an inner wisdom that operates beyond the reach of your conscious mind, orchestrating synchronicities and meaningful coincidences. drawing you toward the people and experiences that will catalyze your growth. This intelligence doesn't follow the linear logic of your thinking mind, but moves in spirals and cycles, honoring both destruction and creation, both loss and renewal. It speaks through your body signals, your emotional reactions, your sudden insights and inexplicable knowings, the persona you wear in the world, your professional identity, your social roles, your carefully curated public self is not false, but it is incomplete. It represents only a fraction of who you truly are. Beneath this surface presentation lies a vast, largely unexplored territory, rich with contradictions, complexities, and untapped potential. The journey toward wholeness requires not the elimination of your persona, but the recognition that it is just one player in a much larger cast of characters. The deepening, symbols as scenery. Picture yourself walking down a rain-soaked alley at midnight, where ancient street lamps cast pools of amber light between long stretches of shadow. The wet stones beneath your feet reflect fragments of illumination, creating a path that seems to shimmer with possibility. This is the landscape of your inner world, mysterious, beautiful, sometimes treacherous, always meaningful. Each puddle you step through ripples outward, disturbing perfect reflections and creating new patterns that speak to the fluid nature of identity itself. You come to a door you've never noticed before, though you've walked this way countless times. It stands slightly ajar, warm light spilling through the crack like an invitation. Your hand hovers over the handle, and you realize this moment represents every threshold you've ever faced, every opportunity to choose growth over safety, truth over comfort, authenticity over approval. The door waits patiently, neither pulling you forward nor pushing you away, simply offering the possibility of passage into unknown territory. Inside, you find a room that feels both completely foreign and utterly familiar. The walls are lined with mirrors. But these are not ordinary reflections. Each surface shows you a different aspect of yourself. The child who believed anything was possible. The adolescent who learned to hide their sensitivity. The young adult who tried so hard to become someone others would love. Some of these reflections smile back at you. Others avert their gaze, still carrying shame about parts of themselves they learned to reject. In the center of the room sits an old chest, its wood worn smooth by countless hands. You approach slowly, feeling the weight of significance in this moment. Inside, you discover artifacts from your own forgotten history. A drawing you made at age 7 that captured something essential about your relationship to beauty. A journal entry from your teenage years that revealed depths of insight you didn't know you possessed. A photograph of yourself laughing with such genuine joy that you can barely recognize the person you've become. But there are darker objects here too. A letter you never sent, expressing your true feelings. A small box containing all the compliments you never allowed yourself to believe. A mirror wrapped in black cloth that reflects the parts of yourself you've learned to fear. These shadow objects pulse with their own kind of life, neither good nor evil, but simply real, demanding acknowledgement after years of being ignored or denied. As you explore deeper, you discover a window that looks out onto a vast landscape under starlight. In the distance, you can see a figure walking slowly along a winding path. As you watch, you realize this figure is also you, but a version of yourself that made different choices, took different risks, listened more carefully to the whispers of authentic desire. This other self turns and waves, not with sadness or regret, but with a kind of knowing recognition, as if to say, I am the road not taken, but I am still part of your story. The room begins to shift and change, walls dissolving into mist, ceiling opening to reveal a vast night sky pierced by stars that seem to pulse with personal meaning. You understand that this is not a room at all, but a state of consciousness, a way of being present to the full spectrum of your experience without judgment or the need to fix anything. In this space, all parts of yourself are welcome, the wise and the foolish, the brave and the fearful, the loving and the wounded. The named wisdom, Jung's voice, enters. It was Carl Jung who first mapped this territory with scientific rigor and poetic insight, recognizing that the human psyche contains multitudes that cannot be reduced to simple explanations. Until you make the unconscious conscious, he observed, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. These words echo through the chambers of your awareness now, offering both challenge and promise. What have you been calling fate that might actually be unconscious patterns waiting for recognition and transformation? Jung understood that healing doesn't happen through the elimination of symptoms, but through the integration of split-off parts of the self. The privilege of a lifetime, he wrote, is to become who you truly are. This becoming is not a destination, but a process, not a final achievement, but an ongoing relationship with the mystery of your own depths. It requires the courage to encounter aspects of yourself that you've been taught to reject or fear. The shadow, in Jung's understanding, is not evil, but simply unconscious. It contains not only your repressed weaknesses, but also your undeveloped strengths, your unlived potentials, your disowned power. Everyone carries a shadow, Jung noted, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. The work of individuation, becoming who you truly are, requires making friends with this shadow, recognizing it as a source of vitality, rather than a threat to be eliminated. Your dreams, Jung discovered, are the natural healing mechanism of the psyche. Attempting to restore balance by compensating for the one-sidedness of conscious attitudes. The dream is a little hidden door in the innermost and most secret recesses of the soul, he wrote, opening into that cosmic night which was psyche, long before there was any ego consciousness. Each dream is a gift from your unconscious, offering guidance, healing, and perspective that your conscious mind cannot provide. Jung recognized that we wear masks, persona, in our daily interactions, and that these masks serve important social functions. But problems arise when we identify completely with a persona, forgetting that it represents only one facet of our complex nature. The persona is a complicated system of relations between individual consciousness and society, he explained, fittingly enough, a kind of mask designed on the one hand to make a definite impression upon others, and on the other to conceal the true nature of the individual. The journey toward wholeness requires what Jung called individuation, the process of integrating unconscious contents into consciousness, of becoming acquainted with all aspects of the self. This is not a selfish pursuit but a contribution to the collective, for the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And an authentic individual enriches the entire human community. The world needs your particular gifts, your unique perspective, your special way of being human. Jung also understood that this work cannot be done through willpower alone, but requires surrender to forces larger than the ego. Your vision becomes clear only when you look into your heart, he wrote. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens. This awakening is both gentle and revolutionary, requiring patience with the slow unfoldment of understanding and courage to act on insights as they emerge. The inner child, tender reclamation, Somewhere within you, a small voice has been waiting to be heard. It speaks not in the sophisticated language of your adult mind, but in the direct, unfiltered expression of pure feeling. This is the voice of your inner child, not the wounded child who learned to adapt and please, but the essential child who once knew joy without reason, who felt wonder without reservation, who trusted their own perceptions before learning to doubt them. This child remembers when the world was full of magic, when every day held the possibility of discovery, when love felt simple and natural rather than complicated and conditional. They remember what it felt like to create without judgment, to express anger without shame, to feel sadness without trying to fix it immediately. They carry within them the blueprint of your authentic nature, the original template, before layers of conditioning obscured its clarity. But this child also carries wounds, moments when their natural expression was met with rejection, when their needs were ignored or minimized, when they learned that certain parts of themselves were unacceptable. These early experiences created internal blueprints about what is safe to express and what must be hidden, patterns that continue to influence your adult relationships and choices even when you're not conscious of their operation. The healing of these early wounds doesn't happen through analysis alone, but through presence. The willingness to sit with this inner child with the same patience and compassion you would offer to any hurt young person. This child doesn't need you to fix their pain, but to acknowledge it, to witness their experience without trying to change or minimize it. They need to know that their feelings matter, that their perceptions were valid, that they deserved better than they received. As you offer this presence to your inner child, something beautiful begins to unfold. The spontaneous joy that was buried under layers of responsibility begins to peek through. The natural creativity that was criticized into hiding starts to emerge. The instinctive knowing that was educated out of you begins to resurface. These qualities don't return all at once, but in gentle waves, like flowers opening after a long winter. Your inner child also holds your capacity for play. Not the scheduled, goal-oriented activities that pass for play in adult life, but the purposeless, delightful engagement with the moment that children excel at naturally. This child knows how to find entertainment in simple things, how to laugh without self-consciousness, how to be fully present to immediate experience without the constant mental commentary that characterizes adult awareness. The relationship with your inner child becomes a kind of internal parenting, where you provide the understanding, protection, and encouragement that may have been missing in your early years. This doesn't mean indulging every childish impulse, but rather creating internal conditions of safety where your authentic nature can emerge without fear of judgment or abandonment. It means learning to speak to yourself with kindness rather than harsh criticism. The shadow dance, embracing the disowned. In the hidden corners of your psyche lives everything you've learned to disown about yourself. Your anger, your selfishness, your neediness, your power, your sexuality, your wildness. These disowned aspects haven't disappeared. They've simply gone underground, operating from the shadows and influencing your life in ways you don't recognize. Jung called this the shadow, and he understood that making peace with it is essential for psychological wholeness. Your shadow contains not only negative qualities, but also positive ones that you were taught to suppress. Perhaps you learned that it wasn't safe to be too intelligent, too beautiful, too powerful, too successful. Maybe you discovered that shining your light made others uncomfortable, so you dimmed it to maintain connection. These disowned gifts live in your shadow too, waiting for permission to emerge and contribute to your life. The shadow makes itself known through projection. You find yourself intensely triggered by certain people who seem to embody the very qualities you've rejected in yourself. The person whose confidence you find arrogant might be reflecting your own disowned power. The individual whose neediness irritates you might be showing you your own unacknowledged dependency. These reactions are invitations to reclaim, split off aspects of yourself. Working with the shadow doesn't mean acting out every rejected impulse, but rather acknowledging these aspects of yourself with consciousness and choice. When you recognize your capacity for selfishness, you can make conscious decisions about when self-care is appropriate and when genuine generosity serves. When you acknowledge your anger, you can access its energy for necessary boundaries and meaningful action rather than letting it leak out sideways in passive-aggressive behaviors. The shadow also holds your unlived life, all the paths you didn't take, the dreams you abandoned, the aspects of yourself you sacrificed for security or approval. This unlived life carries tremendous energy and wisdom, but it can also generate depression and resentment if it remains completely unconscious. The key is finding ways to honor these abandoned parts of yourself, even if you can't literally live out every possibility. As you develop a conscious relationship with your shadow, you discover that it contains not just personal material, but also collective elements. The anger of your ancestors who were oppressed, the grief of your lineage's losses, the wisdom of cultural traditions that were suppressed. You carry not only your own unlived potential, but also that of generations who came before you, and integrating your shadow becomes a form of ancestral healing. The shadow work is not a one-time project, but an ongoing relationship. New material continues to emerge as you grow and change, as old wounds heal and new capacities develop. The goal is not to eliminate the shadow, but to maintain conscious contact with it, to honor its gifts, while making conscious choices about how to express its energies in the world. Dreams as medicine, the night's healing curriculum, every night as your conscious mind releases its grip on reality. Another intelligence takes over, one that speaks in symbols, creates impossible scenarios, and weaves together fragments of memory, emotion, and intuition into stories that carry healing medicine for your soul. Your dreams are not random neural firings, but purposeful communications from the depths of your psyche, offering guidance, integration, and healing in a language that bypasses rational defenses. In your dreams, you encounter aspects of yourself that rarely appear in waking life. You might find yourself as a child again, but with adult awareness, able to offer comfort or understanding to younger versions of yourself. You might discover hidden rooms in familiar houses, representing unexplored aspects of your psyche, waiting to be acknowledged. You might fly without fear, reminding yourself of capacities that feel impossible in waking life, but remain energetically available. The people who appear in your dreams often represent different aspects of your own nature. The angry person might be your disowned, rage-seeking expression. The wise elder could be your inner wisdom, trying to get your attention. The mysterious stranger might represent unknown potentials waiting to be discovered. Even distressing dream figures often carry important messages about parts of yourself that need acknowledgement or integration. Dreams also serve as a kind of emotional processing system, allowing you to experience and work through feelings that may be too overwhelming for waking consciousness. My dream of confronting someone who hurt you, finally expressing anger that you suppressed in the actual situation. You might dream of being comforted after a loss, receiving the care that wasn't available when you needed it most. These dream experiences provide real healing, even though they occur in the realm of symbol and metaphor. Recurring dreams deserve special attention as they often represent persistent attempts by your unconscious to communicate something important. The dream of being chased might be asking you to turn and face what you're running from in waking life. The dream of being unprepared for an exam might be pointing to areas where you feel inadequate or unprepared. The dream of losing something precious might be processing fear of loss or inviting you to examine what truly matters to you. Nightmares, while distressing, often carry the most important medicine. They force you to encounter fears, traumas, or shadow material that you might otherwise avoid. The monster chasing you in the dream might represent an aspect of yourself that you fear but need to integrate. The disaster scenarios might be helping you process collective anxieties or personal fears about change and loss. Even terrifying dreams can become allies when approached with curiosity rather than mere avoidance. Learning to work with your dreams requires developing a new kind of literacy, the ability to read symbol and metaphor, to feel into the emotional resonance of dream images, to trust the intelligence of your unconscious mind. This doesn't require becoming a dream expert, but simply treating your dreams as meaningful communications worthy of attention and respect. The anima and animus, inner, sacred marriage. Within the landscape of your psyche lives a figure that represents everything your conscious personality is not. If you identify as primarily logical, this figure embodies intuition and emotion. If you see yourself as gentle and accommodating, this inner figure might be fierce and uncompromising. Jung called this the contrasexual aspect of the psyche, the anima in men, the animus in women, though these energies exist in all people regardless of gender identity. This inner figure often appears in dreams as a mysterious, compelling person who evokes strong feelings, fascination, fear, longing, or irritation. They might be the dream lover who awakens feelings you didn't know you possessed, the fierce warrior who challenges your habitual patterns, the wise teacher who offers guidance from a perspective completely different from your own. These figures represent unlived aspects of your own nature seeking integration. In relationships, you might find yourself projecting this inner figure onto others, expecting them to carry qualities that actually belong to your own undeveloped potential. The partner who initially seems to complete, you might actually be reflecting back your own unlived wholeness. The person who triggers intense reactions might be showing you aspects of yourself that need acknowledgement and development. Learning to recognize these projections allows for more authentic relationships and personal growth. The integration of the anima or animus doesn't mean becoming someone different, but rather becoming more complete. It means developing capacities that complement your natural strengths, learning to balance thinking with feeling, action with receptivity, independence with interdependence. This inner marriage creates a foundation of wholeness that doesn't depend on external relationships for completion, though it may actually improve your capacity for genuine connection with others. This contrasexual figure also serves as a bridge to the unconscious, mediating between conscious awareness and the deeper wisdom of the psyche. In men, the anima might appear as the source of creative inspiration, emotional depth, and intuitive knowing. In women, the animus might manifest as discriminating wisdom, focused intention, and the capacity for decisive action. Both figures carry gifts that expand the range of conscious capabilities. The relationship with this inner figure requires the same kind of patient, respectful attention that any meaningful relationship demands. You learn their language, honor their gifts, work through conflicts with consciousness and care. This is not a relationship that can be rushed or controlled, but one that unfolds through ongoing dialogue between conscious intention and unconscious wisdom. When this inner sacred marriage begins to stabilize, you find yourself less dependent on others to provide what you can generate internally. You become capable of both fierce independence and tender interdependence, both clear thinking and deep feeling, both purposeful action and patient receptivity. This integration doesn't eliminate the desire for external relationships, but transforms the quality of connection from desperate need to conscious choice. The wounded healer, transforming pain into wisdom. Your wounds are not mistakes to be hidden, but sacred openings through which wisdom enters. Every place where life has broken, you open, becomes a potential source of healing, not just for yourself, but for others who carry similar pain. This is the archetype of the wounded healer, embodied by those who transform their suffering into a capacity to serve, who find meaning in their struggles by using them to alleviate the struggles of others. The pain you've carried is not random or meaningless, but specifically yours to understand and transform. The betrayal that shattered your trust teaches you about the complexity of human nature and the importance of discernment. The loss that broke your heart opens you to compassion for others facing similar grief. The shame that has haunted you becomes a source of understanding for those who struggle with self-acceptance. This transformation doesn't happen automatically or quickly. It requires the willingness to stay present with your pain long enough to understand its message, to resist the impulse to escape into distraction or numbness. It asks you to become curious about your suffering rather than simply wanting it to end. What is this experience trying to teach you? How might this pain be preparing you for some form of service or wisdom that couldn't be accessed any other way? The wounded healer archetype appears in many traditions and stories. The shaman who gains healing power through surviving illness, the therapist whose personal struggles inform their capacity to help others, the artist whose creativity emerges from working with their own darkness. In each case, the wound becomes not something to overcome, but something to integrate, to transform into a source of strength and service. Your wounds also connect you to the collective human experience of suffering. Through your pain, you join the vast community of beings who have struggled, who have faced loss and disappointment and betrayal. This connection can transform isolation into solidarity, personal anguish into universal compassion. Your healing becomes part of a larger healing. Your wisdom, a contribution to the collective understanding of what it means to be human. The wounded healer path requires distinguishing between wounds that need healing and scars that need honoring. Some pain calls for active therapeutic work, for the support of professionals and communities, for concrete changes in life circumstances. Other pain has already done its transformative work and needs to be honored as part of your story without continuing to dominate your present experience. As you develop this capacity to transform pain into wisdom, you discover that your wounds become sources of authenticity and connection. Others recognize something real in you, something that can't be faked or manufactured. Your willingness to acknowledge your own struggles gives others permission to be honest about theirs. Your healing journey becomes a beacon for others finding their way through similar darkness. The collective unconscious, tapping ancient wisdom. Beneath your personal unconscious lies an even deeper layer of psyche, the collective unconscious, where the accumulated wisdom of humanity resides in the form of archetypal patterns and images. These universal themes appear across cultures and throughout history, representing fundamental aspects of human experience that transcend individual biography. When you connect with this deeper layer, you access wisdom that extends far beyond your personal history. The mother archetype, for example, carries the universal pattern of nurturing, protection, and unconditional love, but also the potential for smothering and possessiveness. Whether or not you had a biological mother, you carry this archetypal pattern within you, and it influences your capacity to care for yourself and others. Connecting with the positive aspect of this archetype can heal wounds from your personal mothering while accessing a source of nurture that doesn't depend on external relationships. The hero's journey represents another archetypal pattern, the call to adventure, the departure from familiar territory, the encounter with challenges and allies, the transformation that occurs through facing trials, and the return home with wisdom to share. Your life follows variations of this pattern, and recognizing these archetypal themes can provide meaning and direction during difficult transitions. The wise elder archetype carries the accumulated wisdom of life experience, the capacity to see patterns across time, the perspective that comes from having survived many seasons of growth and change. This wisdom exists within you regardless of your chronological age, accessible through contemplation, dream work, and careful attention to the guidance that emerges from your deepest knowing. When you're facing challenges that feel unprecedented in your personal experience, connecting with the collective unconscious can provide reassurance and guidance. Others have faced similar struggles throughout history. The archetypal patterns that live within you have been tested across countless generations and cultures. You are not alone in your journey, not pioneering territory that has never been explored. The shadow also has collective dimensions, the aspects of human nature that entire cultures have learned to suppress or deny. Your personal shadow work connects you to larger patterns of healing that are needed in the world. As you integrate your own disowned aspects, you contribute to the healing of collective shadows around power, sexuality, anger, and other energies that have been problematically suppressed or expressed. Accessing the collective unconscious often happens through symbol, myth, and story rather than linear thinking. A particular image from a dream might connect you to an ancient mythological pattern. A synchronicity in your daily life might reflect archetypal themes playing out in your personal experience. Learning to recognize and work with these deeper patterns adds richness and meaning to your individual journey. Synchronicity, the meaningful coincidence. There are moments when the external world seems to mirror your internal process so perfectly that mere chance cannot explain the correspondence. You think about someone you haven't seen in years, and they call within hours. You struggle with a specific question, and a stranger's conversation provides the exact insight you needed. You're contemplating a major life change, and meaningful signs appear repeatedly in your environment. Jung called these meaningful coincidences synchronicity, and he understood them as evidence of a deep connection between psyche and world. Synchronicity operates according to a different logic than linear causality. Instead of one event causing another in a chain of mechanical relationships, synchronicity reveals patterns of meaning that connect inner and outer experience through resonance rather than force. These moments often occur when you're in a state of emotional intensity or psychological transition, as if the psyche's heightened activity somehow influences the field of possibility around you. Learning to recognize synchronicity requires developing a different kind of attention, one that notices not just what happens, but how what happens relates to your inner experience. The book that falls open to exactly the page you need to read might be coincidence, or it might be synchronicity if the message addresses a question you've been pondering. The series of delays that prevents you from attending an event might be frustration, or it might be protection if you later discover something problematic about the gathering. Synchronicity seems to increase when you're living authentically, when your actions align with your deeper values and purposes. It's as if the universe conspires to support you when you're moving in the direction of your genuine development. Conversely, when you're forcing outcomes or pursuing goals that don't align with your authentic nature, synchronicities may dry up and obstacles may multiply as signals to reconsider your path. These meaningful coincidences often serve as confirmation that you're on the right track, or as course corrections when you've wandered from your authentic path. They might provide encouragement when you're doubting yourself, or challenges when you're becoming complacent. Sometimes they offer practical guidance about specific decisions, appearing as unmistakable signs that point toward particular choices or directions. Working with synchronicity doesn't mean becoming passive or superstitious, but rather maintaining a balance between conscious intention and receptive awareness. You continue to make plans and take actions while remaining open to the guidance that emerges through meaningful coincidences. You neither force synchronicities to occur nor ignore them when they do, but rather treat them as one form of intelligence among many that can inform your decisions. The cultivation of synchronicity requires patience and trust. These meaningful coincidences cannot be manufactured through effort alone, but seem to emerge naturally when you're engaged in authentic psychological work. When you're wrestling with real questions and genuinely open to guidance from sources beyond your conscious control. They are gifts that arise from the intersection of preparation and receptivity, intention, and surrender. The transcendent function, beyond either or. Within you exists a capacity that Jung called the transcendent function, the ability to hold opposing forces in creative tension until a new solution emerges that transcends the limitations of either extreme. This is not compromise, which weakens both positions, but synthesis, which creates something genuinely new that honors the truth in each opposing pole while moving beyond their limitations. Your life is full of apparent contradictions that create internal conflict. You want independence and connection, security and adventure, solitude and community, stability and growth. The conventional approach tries to choose one side or the other, but the transcendent function suggests a third option, finding ways to honor both needs through creative solutions that seemed impossible from within the either-or framework. This capacity emerges when you stop trying to resolve contradictions through force and instead learn to hold the tension consciously. Instead of rushing to eliminate discomfort, you sit with the opposing energies and allow something new to emerge from their interaction. This requires patience and trust in processes that cannot be controlled or predicted, but it leads to solutions that are more creative and sustainable than those achieved through willpower alone. The transcendent function operates through symbol and image rather than logical analysis. When you're struggling with a difficult decision, the answer might come through a dream image that captures the essence of the situation in ways that linear thinking cannot. A metaphor might suddenly illuminate a path forward that honors all aspects of a complex situation. An intuitive knowing might arise that bypasses rational analysis while satisfying deeper wisdom. This capacity is particularly valuable when working with psychological material that seems contradictory. You can be both strong and vulnerable, both independent and interdependent, both accepting of yourself and committed to growth. The transcendent function allows you to embody these apparent paradoxes without splitting into rigid positions or collapsing into confusion. Developing this capacity requires practicing with smaller contradictions before attempting to work with major life decisions. You might experiment with holding both excitement and anxiety about a new opportunity, both love and frustration in a relationship, both confidence, and humility in your abilities. As you become more comfortable with internal complexity, you develop the capacity to navigate larger paradoxes with grace and creativity. The transcendent function also operates collectively, offering possibilities for resolving conflicts that seem intractable when approached from positions of opposition. When groups or individuals learn to hold tension creatively rather than rushing to eliminate disagreement, innovative solutions can emerge that serve needs that seemed mutually exclusive. This capacity becomes increasingly important in a world that faces complex challenges requiring both and, rather than either-or solutions. Integration, the ongoing journey. The work of psychological integration is not a destination you arrive at, but a way of traveling through life. It's the ongoing process of bringing unconscious material into consciousness, of making friends with rejected aspects of yourself, of learning to dance with paradox rather than being paralyzed by it. This integration happens not through dramatic breakthroughs alone, but through countless small moments of choosing awareness over automaticity, compassion over judgment, curiosity over fear. Integration begins with the simple but revolutionary act of paying attention to your inner experience without immediately trying to change it. When anxiety arises, instead of rushing to eliminate it, you might pause and ask what this feeling is trying to communicate. When anger surfaces, rather than suppressing it or acting it out unconsciously, you might explore what boundary needs to be established or what value is being threatened. This kind of conscious relationship with your emotional life gradually builds the capacity to respond rather than react. The integration of shadow material requires particular patience and skill. As you begin to acknowledge disowned aspects of yourself, there's often a tendency to swing to the opposite extreme, from denying your anger to expressing it inappropriately, from suppressing your needs to becoming demanding. True integration involves finding conscious, mature ways to honor these previously rejected energies while maintaining awareness of their potential for both creation and destruction. Your relationships become laboratories for integration. As you practice bringing your authentic self into connection with others. This doesn't mean dumping every feeling or thought on those around you, but rather learning to communicate your truth in ways that honor both your integrity and the relationship. You practice setting boundaries without building walls, expressing needs without becoming demanding, offering support without losing yourself in others' problems. The integration process is spiral rather than linear. Issues you thought you had resolved may resurface at deeper levels, requiring new understanding and new responses. The inner child who seemed healed may need attention again during times of stress. The shadow material you thought you had integrated may emerge in new forms as you grow into greater personal power. This cycling is not failure, but the natural rhythm of deepening psychological work. Dreams continue to be important allies in the integration process, often showing you both how far you've come and what still needs attention. You might dream of being in a familiar house, but discovering new rooms representing expanded consciousness and new capacities. You might dream of caring for animals or children, reflecting your growing ability to nurture previously neglected aspects of yourself. Even difficult dreams often show progress, perhaps depicting you facing challenges with greater courage or receiving help from unexpected sources. As integration progresses, you begin to experience what Jung called the paradox of individuation. The more authentically yourself you become, the more connected you feel to others and to life itself. Your willingness to acknowledge your own complexity allows you to appreciate the complexity of others. Your acceptance of your own shadows creates space for others to be human and imperfect. Your commitment to your own growth inspires others to pursue their own authentic development. The sacred ordinary, finding meaning in daily life. As your inner work deepens, you begin to recognize the sacred dimension that has always been present in ordinary experience. The morning coffee becomes a ritual of awakening, not just to caffeine, but to consciousness itself. The commute transforms from mere transportation into a transition between different aspects of your identity. The conversations with family members become opportunities for practicing presence, compassion, and authentic communication. This shift in perception doesn't require dramatic changes in your external circumstances, but rather a new quality of attention to what is already happening. You notice the way light moves across your wall in the afternoon, the particular rhythm of rain against the window, the subtle changes in your breath as you navigate different emotions throughout the day. These small observations become anchors that connect you to the present moment and to the deeper currents of meaning that flow beneath surface events. Work takes on new significance when approached as an opportunity for service rather than mere obligation. Even tasks that seem mundane can become vehicles for practicing patience, precision, or collaboration. The difficult colleague becomes a teacher of boundaries. The challenging project becomes an opportunity to develop new capacities. The routine responsibilities become chances to practice showing up fully for whatever life presents. Your relationship with time begins to shift as you learn to distinguish between chronos, the mechanical time of clocks and schedules, and kairos, the qualitative time of meaningful moments and natural rhythms. while you still meet external deadlines and commitments. You also learn to honor your natural cycles of energy and attention. You notice when you're most creative, most reflective, most social, and you begin to structure your life in ways that work with, rather than against these rhythms. The practice of finding meaning in ordinary experience becomes a form of active meditation, a way of staying present to the sacred dimension of life without requiring special circumstances or dramatic peak experiences. This doesn't diminish the value of extraordinary moments, but rather creates a foundation of meaning that doesn't depend on constantly seeking something beyond what is already available. Even suffering takes on new meaning when approached as raw material for wisdom, rather than simply something to endure or escape. The grief that follows loss becomes a teacher of love's importance. The anxiety that accompanies growth becomes information about what matters most to you. The anger that arises in response to injustice becomes fuel for necessary action. This makes suffering pleasant, but it transforms it from meaningless affliction into meaningful experience. This approach to daily life requires ongoing practice and patience. The tendency to slip back into automatic unconscious patterns is natural and forgivable. The key is developing the capacity to notice when you've become disconnected from meaning and to gently return your attention to the sacred dimension that is always available. This returning becomes its own kind of spiritual practice, one that doesn't require special beliefs or techniques, but simply the willingness to be present to life as it is. The call to wholeness, answering your deep nature. Somewhere beneath all the noise of daily concerns, beneath the pressures and expectations and learned patterns of response, a deeper intelligence is always calling you toward wholeness. This call doesn't come through dramatic revelations or external voices, but through subtle promptings that arise from your most authentic nature. It might appear as a persistent sense that something is missing from your life, a growing dissatisfaction with choices that once felt adequate, or a mysterious longing for something you cannot quite name. This call toward wholeness is not the same as the ego's desire for perfection or improvement. It doesn't promise that you will become someone different or better in conventional terms. Instead, it invites you to become more fully who you already are beneath all the layers of conditioning and adaptation. It asks you to remember capacities you've forgotten, to reclaim parts of yourself you've learned to hide, to trust wisdom that cannot be explained in rational terms. The call often intensifies during times of transition, when old structures are breaking down, when familiar roles no longer fit, when life circumstances force you to question assumptions you've never examined. These periods of upheaval, while uncomfortable, create openings for authenticity that might not be available during more stable times. The breakdown of external securities can reveal internal resources that you didn't know you possessed. Answering this call requires courage because it often means disappointing others' expectations or releasing identities that have provided security, even if they've limited your growth. It might mean leaving relationships that require you to be less than you are, or careers that utilize only a fraction of your capacities, or living situations that feel safe but stifling. The call toward wholeness is relentless but patient, continuing to whisper even when you're not ready to listen. The response to this call is always unique to your particular nature and circumstances. For some, it might mean developing creative capacities that have been dormant. For others, it might involve learning to set boundaries or express needs that have been suppressed. Some might be called to greater solitude and introspection, while others might need to risk greater intimacy and connection. The key is learning to distinguish the authentic call from the ego's preferences or society shoulds. This process requires developing trust in your own deep knowing, even when it contradicts external authorities or conventional wisdom. Your authentic nature has its own intelligence, its own timing, its own way of unfolding that cannot be rushed or forced. Learning to collaborate with this natural process rather than trying to control it becomes essential for genuine development rather than mere self-improvement. The call toward wholeness is also a call toward service, though not necessarily in obvious or dramatic ways. As you become more authentically yourself, you naturally contribute something unique to the world that no one else can offer. Your particular combination of gifts, wounds, perspectives, and experiences creates a special capacity for understanding and serving that emerges naturally from your authentic development rather than from external obligations. The mystery of becoming, embracing the unknown. As you embark more consciously on this journey toward wholeness, you encounter a fundamental mystery. The more you understand about yourself, the more mysterious you become. Each layer of self-knowledge reveals new depths to explore. Each answer generates new questions. Each achievement of integration opens awareness to previously unseen complexity. This is not a failure of the process, but its very nature. consciousness expanding to embrace ever greater dimensions of what it means to be human. The rational mind wants maps and guarantees, clear steps and predictable outcomes. But the journey of individuation follows the logic of organic growth rather than mechanical assembly. Like a tree that grows according to its nature, while adapting to unique conditions of soil and weather, your development has both universal patterns and utterly personal expressions that cannot be reduced to formulas or systems. This uncertainty can be unsettling for the parts of you that crave control and predictability. Learning to embrace the unknown becomes an essential capacity for anyone committed to authentic growth. This doesn't mean being passive or irresponsible, but rather maintaining conscious engagement with life while holding outcomes lightly, staying open to possibilities that your current understanding cannot imagine. The mystery deepens as you recognize that you are not a static entity to be understood once and for all, but a dynamic process of becoming that continues to unfold throughout your lifetime. The person you are today carries within them the seeds of future development that will surprise even your current self. Your potential exceeds your present capacity to comprehend it, and this limitation is a gift rather than a problem. It ensures that life remains interesting and growth remains possible. Working with mystery requires developing what Keats called negative capability, the ability to remain in uncertainty and doubt without irritably reaching after fact and reason. This capacity allows you to sit with questions that have no easy answers, to remain present to experiences that cannot be categorized or explained, to trust processes that operate beyond the reach of conscious control. The mystery also extends to your connection with something larger than yourself. Whether you call it the unconscious, the collective psyche, the sacred, or simply the unknown dimensions of existence. As your consciousness expands, you become increasingly aware of participating in patterns and processes that extend far beyond your individual biography. This recognition can be both humbling and inspiring, connecting you to something vast while maintaining your unique perspective within it. Embracing mystery doesn't mean abandoning discernment or critical thinking, but rather recognizing their limitations and complementing them with other ways of knowing. Intuition, embodied wisdom, symbolic understanding, and direct experience all provide valuable information that purely rational analysis cannot access. Learning to work with multiple forms of intelligence creates a richer, more complete relationship with the complexity of existence. The return, bringing wisdom to the world. Every authentic journey into the depths of the psyche eventually calls for a return to engagement with the external world. But this return is qualitatively different from your original departure. You bring back wisdom gained through inner work, perspectives earned through wrestling with your own shadows, and capacities developed through integrating previously split off aspects of yourself. This return is not retreat from the inner work, but its natural culmination and continuation in a new form. The wisdom you've gained through your inner journey cannot remain private property without losing its vitality. Like water that becomes stagnant when it stops flowing, psychological insights must find expression in lived relationships and meaningful action to maintain their life and relevance. This doesn't mean preaching to others about what you've learned, but rather embodying new capacities in your daily interactions and choices. Your changed relationship with yourself inevitably affects how you relate to others. The compassion you've developed for your own struggles extends naturally to others facing similar challenges. The boundaries you've learned to set with your internal critic help you respond more skillfully to external criticism. The integration of your shadow reduces your tendency to project disowned aspects onto others, creating space for more authentic relationships. The return also involves finding ways to contribute your unique gifts to the healing of collective wounds. Your personal shadow work connects to larger patterns of healing needed in families, communities, and cultures. The integration of your anima or animus contributes to the healing of gender-related wounds in the collective psyche. Your willingness to face your own patterns of oppression and privilege becomes part of larger movements towards social justice and equity. This contribution doesn't require grand gestures or public recognition. Often, the most important service happens through small interactions where your increased presence and authenticity create ripples of healing that extend far beyond what you can see. The patience you show with a difficult family member, the kindness you offer to a stranger in distress, the boundary you maintain with grace rather than hostility. These moments of conscious response contribute to the overall healing of the human community. The return also involves integrating spiritual insights with practical responsibilities. The wisdom gained through inner work must prove itself in the realm of relationships, work, and daily choices. This integration often requires creativity and patience as you learn to honor both transcendent insights and mundane requirements without betraying either. The goal is not to escape ordinary life, but to bring greater consciousness to it. Your ongoing development continues to require both inner attention and outer engagement. The alternation between withdrawal for reflection and return for action becomes a natural rhythm rather than a conflict to be resolved. Each cycle of this movement deepens your capacity for both solitude and community, both introspection and service, both personal growth and collective contribution. The eternal spiral, growth without end. The journey of individuation is not a linear progression toward a final destination, but a spiral path that revisits familiar themes at ever deeper levels. Issues you thought you had resolved will return for further exploration. Capacities you believed you had fully developed will reveal new dimensions. Relationships you imagined you understood will present fresh challenges and opportunities for growth. This cycling is not repetition, but revolution in the truest sense, a spiraling movement that covers new ground while honoring eternal patterns. Each revolution of the spiral brings you to a similar place, but with expanded understanding and greater capacity. The anxiety you experience at 40 carries different wisdom than the anxiety you felt at 20. Even if the surface circumstances seem similar, the grief you process after decades of living has different depths than early experiences of loss. Incorporating lessons learned through multiple encounters with impermanence. This deepening makes life richer rather than merely repetitive. The spiral nature of growth means that patience becomes essential for anyone committed to authentic development. The parts of you that want quick fixes and permanent solutions must learn to work with the slower rhythms of organic change. Real transformation happens gradually through countless small shifts that eventually accumulate into recognizable change. Trusting this process requires faith in forces larger than immediate understanding or control. This pattern also means that there is no final arrival, no point where the work is complete, and you can rest on your achievements. Every expansion of consciousness reveals new territories to explore. Every integration of shadow material makes visible previously hidden aspects requiring attention. Every healing creates capacity for new forms of growth that were impossible at earlier stages of development. The eternal nature of the spiral can be either exhausting or liberating, depending on your perspective. If you approach it with the ego's desire for completion and mastery, it becomes a source of frustration. There is always more work to do. always new challenges to face. But if you embrace it as the natural rhythm of life itself, it becomes a source of wonder and renewed engagement. There is always more to discover, always new depths to explore. The spiral also connects your personal journey to larger patterns of growth and change that operate throughout nature and history. Seasons cycle with variations that make each winter and spring unique while following eternal patterns. Cultures rise and fall in spiraling movements that revisit ancient themes with new expressions. Your individual development participates in these larger rhythms, connecting your personal story to the ongoing evolution of consciousness itself. Understanding the spiral nature of growth helps you maintain perspective during difficult phases of the journey. When old patterns resurface or familiar challenges return, you can recognize these not as failures, but as opportunities for deeper integration. The spiral's upward movement ensures that even apparent regression serves the larger purpose of expansion and development that operates beyond the ego's immediate comprehension. The deepest rest, coming home to yourself after all the journeying, after all the exploration of inner territories and integration of split-off aspects, there comes a moment of profound rest. Not the sleep of unconsciousness, but the wakeful peace of finally coming home to yourself. This is not a destination you arrive at through effort, but a recognition of what has always been present. Beneath all the seeking and striving, you realize that what you were looking for was never missing, but simply obscured by layers of conditioning and the noise of constant becoming. This homecoming doesn't eliminate growth or challenge, but provides a foundation of peace that remains stable even during times of change and difficulty. You discover an internal refuge that doesn't depend on external circumstances, a source of strength that cannot be taken away by loss or failure. This refuge is not escape from life, but the ground from which authentic engagement becomes possible. The deepest rest comes from accepting yourself completely, not just the parts you're proud of or the aspects that others approve of, but the full spectrum of your humanity, including your flaws, limitations, and continuing areas of growth. This acceptance doesn't mean complacency or resignation, but rather the end of the exhausting war against your own nature. From this foundation of self-acceptance, genuine change becomes possible because it's no longer driven by self-rejection, but by love of what you might become. You recognize that you've been carrying within yourself all along everything you need for wholeness and happiness, the inner child's capacity for joy, the shadow's power and authenticity, the anima or animus's wisdom and creativity, the self's guidance and meaning. All of these have been present throughout your journey, waiting for recognition and integration, rather than acquisition from external sources. This recognition brings a quality of gratitude that encompasses not just the good experiences, but the difficult ones as well. You begin to see how even your mistakes and failures have contributed to your development, how your wounds have become sources of wisdom and compassion, how your struggles have strengthened capacities that couldn't have been developed through ease alone. The entire journey reveals itself as purposeful, even when individual experiences felt meaningless at the time. The coming home to yourself also includes coming home to your place in the larger web of existence. You recognize your simultaneous uniqueness and commonality, your individual significance and humble participation in something far greater than personal concerns. This perspective provides both meaning and proportion, connecting you to eternal patterns, while honoring your temporary but precious human experience. From this place of deep rest, action arises naturally and spontaneously, rather than from compulsion or external pressure. You respond to what life presents with presence and authenticity rather than reacting from old patterns or unconscious motivations. This doesn't make you passive, but rather more genuinely active, more truly responsive to what each moment actually requires, rather than what your conditioning dictates. The eternal return, beginning again. Every ending is also a beginning. Every arrival also a departure for new territory. As you rest in the peace of coming home to yourself, you simultaneously prepare for new adventures in consciousness, new opportunities for growth and service, new ways of expressing the inexhaustible creativity of the human spirit. The circle completes itself only to begin again at a higher octave, carrying forward the wisdom gained while remaining open to fresh discoveries. The eternal return is not mere repetition, but renewal, like the sun that sets each evening only to rise again each morning, transformed by its journey through darkness into new light. Your consciousness, having journeyed through the depths of personal and collective unconscious, returns to ordinary awareness enriched and enlarged, capable of perceiving dimensions of meaning that were invisible before your descent into the depths. This return to the beginning carries the innocence of the child, but tempered by the wisdom of experience. You approach life with fresh eyes, but eyes that have seen both beauty and horror, both love and betrayal, both meaning and apparent meaninglessness. This seasoned innocence allows you to remain open to wonder while maintaining appropriate boundaries, to trust while exercising discernment, to love while honoring realistic limitations. The beginning that follows every ending is itself pregnant with unknown possibilities. The integration you've achieved creates foundation for developments that you cannot imagine from your current perspective. The capacities you've developed prepare you for challenges and opportunities that haven't yet appeared on your horizon. Your expansion of consciousness contributes to collective evolution in ways that extend far beyond your personal story. As you stand at this threshold between completion and new beginning, you carry within yourself all the characters from your inner journey. The wise elder, the playful child, the fierce protector, the gentle nurturer, the creative artist, the practical organizer. These aspects of yourself are no longer split off and warring, but integrated into a symphony of capacities that can respond to whatever life presents with appropriate and authentic expression. The night that brought you into these depths gradually gives way to dawn, but it is a different dawn than any you have experienced before. The light that emerges carries within it the darkness you have befriended, the shadows you have integrated, the depths you have explored. This is not the harsh light of superficial optimism, but the warm, complex illumination of wisdom earned through conscious engagement with the full spectrum of human experience. You realize that this entire journey through the valleys of despair and up the mountains of insight, through the deserts of confusion and into the oases of understanding, has been preparation for your real life, which begins now with each conscious breath, each authentic choice, each moment of presence to what is actually here. The preparation is complete, but the adventure is just beginning. And so you step forward into the new day, carrying within yourself the peace of deep rest and the excitement of infinite possibility, knowing that you are both completely yourself and forever becoming, both arrived and always traveling, both ancient in wisdom and newborn in wonder. The night voyage ends where it began, with you whole and holy, ready to meet whatever comes, with the full presence of who you have always been and are still becoming. In this moment of new beginning, you whisper a quiet thank you to the darkness that has been your teacher, to the pain that has been your guide, to the confusion that has been your doorway to clarity. You honor the journey while releasing attachment to it, ready to write the next chapter of your unfolding story, with the ink of consciousness and the pen of conscious choice. The eternal return has brought you home to yourself, and from this home all journeys begin and end. Welcome home. Welcome to the beginning. Welcome to your life.